Greetings, my excellent friends.
Do we know you?
I'm Kelly.
Wait, you're Rufus's daughter.
I am, and I've been wanting to meet you my whole life.
It must be very disappointing.
Not at all. We have a problem, gentlemen. Potentially a very serious problem.
About the music?
About the music. They just want to talk to you.
Dude, I got a very bad feeling about this.
It'll be fine, Ted. They totally love us in the future, dude.
Whoa! Dude, our dads are totally in trouble. I feel so bad for them. They've been doing this on their own for the longest time.
Yeah, I wish there was some way we could help them out, you know?
Yeah. But how?
In a world overflowing with movies, we need a hero. Someone to separate the bad from the good.
Sounds like a job. Verbal dioramas. Watches all the movies from comedy to drama. From the top roll sound. And don't forget the action. She'll watch until the end and then she'll give you her reaction. Movies you know, movies you don't. Prequels, sequels, remakes, and trivia and outtakes. Movies you know, movies you don't. Interesting stories, all the categories.
Hi everyone, I'm Em and welcome to Verbal Diorama episode 273, Bill and Ted Face the Music. This is the podcast that's all about the history and legacy of movies you know and movies you don't. And as always, welcome to Verbal Diorama. Whether you are a brand new listener, whether you are a regular returning listener, thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing to listen to this podcast. I am so happy to have you here, just generally, but also for the history and legacy of Bill and Ted Face the Music. And in the grand spirit of this podcast and of Bill and Ted themselves, be excellent to each other and party on. But the listeners of this podcast are always excellent and have been especially excellent to me, just generally, but also over the last 5.5 years of doing this podcast. So a huge thank you to everyone who listens to this podcast, to everyone who's listening to this podcast right now, and to everyone who has listened and continues to listen to and support this podcast. It genuinely means so much to have you with me on my personal journey through time. And of course, a huge thanks for the wonderful comments on the most recent episodes on Batman Forever and Spider-Man 3. And this month specifically has been so much fun because I've managed to finish off quite a few trilogies that I've done on this podcast. Now, I know, I've got Batman and Robin to do, and I will get round to Batman and Robin. But when we're talking about trilogies, this month has been all about basically doing those third movies in trilogies that just have never materialised on this podcast. Spider-Man 3 was my personal choice this month. All of the others were chosen by the patrons. And it was really cool because the love for the Bully Maguire really shows no signs of abating. And yeah, of course, the Amazing Spider-Man movies will show up on this podcast at some point because I've been very vocal about my love for Andrew Garfield. So how could they not, right? I can't say when, but I will schedule the Amazing Spider-Man movies at some point. And when it came to this month, which I've dubbed Threequeltember, I had a lot of ideas and a lot of movies that I really wanted to do, but I could only choose 4. And so I asked the patrons to vote, and they voted for 3 out of the 4 movies. And Bill and Ted Face the Music was the one with the highest number of patron votes, by far. And when I say the highest number, the second highest was Jurassic Park 3. And Bill and Ted Face the Music got almost double the number of votes that Jurassic Park 3 got. So I put this movie at the end of the month on purpose because I kind of wanted to get all of the other threequels kind of out of the way and then finish the month on this ultimate high of Bill and Ted Face the Music, because I figured if the patrons wanted it that badly, then surely the rest of the general public would also really, really want it that badly. And it's always so much fun to look at Bill and Ted movies. I am a huge fan of this franchise. I am a huge fan of one of the stars of this franchise in particular. And this whole episode technically is an obligatory Keanu reference. But this was a long-awaited legacy sequel. It came out 29 years after the second movie in the trilogy. And this movie almost faced the music itself. It had constant financial issues, and it almost ended up getting derailed by a modern reboot with a brand new cast. And then, once all of that was sorted, it got made and then it got released during a global pandemic. So really, everything was against Bill and Ted Face the Music. However, we party on. Here's the trailer for Bill and Ted Face the Music.
When your wives suggested couples therapy, do you think that this is what they had in mind?
Definitely. I mean, we're a couple of couples, right?
Bill, Ted, enough of the delusions. You didn't time travel, and you didn't go to heaven and hell. Here's a real idea for you. Be role models to your daughters. Get real jobs.
Bill, we've spent our whole life trying to unite the world. And I'm tired, dude.
Ted, we have a destiny to fulfill.
Whoa! Greetings, my excellent friends. We have a problem.
Step forward. A song created by Preston Logan, performed tonight, will save reality as we know it.
Oh. Dude, we better write that song now. Or why can't we just go to the future when we have written it?
And take it from ourselves.
Except, won't that be stealing?
Cheers! How is that stealing if we're stealing it from ourselves, dude?
Dude, our dads are totally in trouble.
You should help them out.
No way! How's it going, Bill and Ted?
We're putting together a most extraordinary band.
Hey, you want to be in our band? Oh.
Oh, this is ja fantastisch. We're gonna go talk to Death. Is he playing hopscotch by himself? Dude, he's cheating. Hey, Death.
Life, it isn't a wild stallions.
Let's rock!
Be excellent to each other.
And party on, dudes.
Tina! Billy! Dad! How you doing?
Well, you know, we're dead and we're in hell.
But how you doing?
We're good.
Bill S. Preston, Esquire, and Ted Theodore Logan were once wild stallions, but are now middle-aged dads of daughters Thea and Billy, aka Little Ted and Little Bill. And their prophesied song to unite the world has failed to materialise. Their marriages to princesses Elizabeth and Joanna are on the brink of collapse, and time and space is beginning to implode. Kelly, the daughter of Rufus, takes them to the year 2720 in San Dimas, and they're told they have till 7:17 p.m. that evening to create the song, or reality as we know it will cease to exist. Let's run through the cast. We have Alex Winter as Bill S. Preston, Esquire, Keanu Reeves as Ted Theodore Logan, Kristen Schaal as Kelly, Samara Weaving as Thea Preston, Bridget Lundy Payne as Billy Logan, Anthony Carrigan as Dennis Caleb McCoy, Erin Hayes as Princess Elizabeth Logan, Gemma Mays as Princess Joanna Preston, Amy Stock as Missy, Holland Taylor as the Great Leader, Kid Cudi as himself, William Sadler as Death, Gillian Bell as Dr. Taylor Wood, Hal Landon Jr. as Chief Logan, and Beck Bennett as Officer Deacon Logan. Bill and Ted Face the Music has a screenplay by Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon. It was directed by Dean Parasote and based on characters by Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon. Throughout cinema, there have been few franchises more willing to take on the truly philosophical questions of our time than the Bill and Ted franchise. How would Socrates, or Socrates as he's more often known, and Billy the Kid feel about modern late 80s malls? Would Joan of Arc be a good aerobics instructor? Would Napoleon enjoy a water park or two? How frightening are grandmothers and the Easter Bunny? And what happens when you beat Death at Twister? Well, you play him a battleship, of course, duh. Bill and Ted has never strayed from its core values of being excellent to each other and partying on. They're a pair of innocent suckers who took us on their excellent adventure and their bogus journey. And before we face the music with them, now is a good time to mention episodes 220 on Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and 221 on Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey on this podcast, just to catch up on the excellence and bogusness. But it's safe to say that the journey for them to face the music was a long one, and for the creators Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon, wholly unexpected and seemingly improbable for many years. Bill and Ted have never been a huge franchise. This is no Mission Impossible or Fast and Furious style box office behemoth. Bill and Ted are cult classics, propelled and fueled by millennial love and nostalgia. All four of the core team, Matheson, Solomon, Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves, they're all still good friends, and have gone on to have their own successful respective careers. Chris Matheson as a screenwriter of movies like A Goofy Movie and Imagine That. Ed Solomon as a writer of movies like Super Mario Brothers. My recent episode of Super Mario Brothers is still one of my favourite episodes I've ever done, by the way. Men in Black, Charlie's Angels, and Now You See Me. Alex Winter as a director, writer and producer, mostly of documentaries. And Keanu Reeves, I don't know, just some unknown actor no one's ever heard of. Bill and Ted was never a franchise concerned with making money. It was proud of its characters and its fan base, and the conception of Face the Music had both firmly front and centre. This was not an exercise to print money. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey just hadn't made the same mark that Excellent Adventure had, and while all involved were proud of pushing for difference in that movie, rather than just rehashing the first film again, the general consensus between all involved was that these two dudes were done. Their story was over, and the movies enjoyed a 90s and 2000s on cable TV, VHS and DVD rentals, and basically over time became cult classics. But for that very reason, a third Bill and Ted movie was always going to be a hard sell. And there were never really any plans to do another, not for 14 years at least. Keanu Reeves just happened to be asked in 2005 whether he'd be interested in reprising the role of Ted while he was on the red carpet at an event, and he responded positively. At the time, his star had never been higher, after starring in The Matrix and its sequels, as well as Constantine, which is great and a bit of an underrated gem if I'm honest. That's episode 26 of this podcast, by the way. After a couple of back and forth conversations, the equivalent today of a group chat on WhatsApp, the four men met at Alex Winter's house for a barbecue and started spitballing ideas about a Bill and Ted sequel. They wanted to make it a story worth telling, and the idea became the stress and the pressure of having been told your music's gonna save the world and what it does actually feel like, and maybe relieving that pressure. Solomon and Matheson decided to write a spec script in late 2008, early 2009, knowing that they didn't own the rights to make it, nor did they have permission from the studio that did. That's kind of important, and I'm going to come back to it shortly. But this was something that took its time to germinate, with all four men sharing ideas and eventually coming to the conclusion that the idea that they had was a no-brainer. And so this spec script was written, and then they found out that MGM, the studio that owned the rights to Bill and Ted, were not only planning to reboot the franchise with younger actors, but that they already had a script in place. That script was called Bill and Ted's Friggin' Badass Voyage, was written by Suzanne Francis and Gabe Griffoni, with a third draft dated the 1st of November 2007. It's not too different to Excellent Adventure. The duo collect historical figures, this time including Eric the Red, Cleopatra and Calamity Jane. That reboot eventually failed on its own terms. The script is available online if you're interested to read it, but the studio didn't think a legacy sequel would make financial sense either. They didn't think Bill and Ted would make money overseas, and frankly, he would want to see a middle-aged Bill and Ted. Quite a few people, as it happens. So the project languished in purgatory throughout the late 2000s and early 2010s. But in the meantime, they decided to utilise the fan base to try and build up anticipation for a potential sequel. In 2014, Solomon and Matheson went public with the idea for Bill and Ted 3, and fans started petitions and letter-writing campaigns. to show the strong audience demand and to persuade the studio to make the sequel, but still found funding to get the movie made was the sticking point. And then John Wick happened. Now, in recent years, Alex Winter has been very vocal about the fact he doesn't believe John Wick did help Face the Music get made, whereas Chris Matheson thinks it was pivotal in getting the financial investment needed. After John Wick, two wealthy investors, David Herring and Patrick Dugan, came in to provide the financial backing for Face the Music. Dean Parasote joined as director, and by the end of 2014, script reworking had begun in earnest. But they were still without studio backing, and deals would be discussed and then fall apart at the last moment. It would take a further 3 years to secure further investment. They got the backing of Hollywood director Steven Soderbergh, as well as Scott Kroop, the original producer of both Bill and Ted movies. They approached MGM for distribution prior to them relaunching Orion Pictures in September 2017. With production ready to start and the backing of fans online, MGM accepted the offer to distribute the movie, which didn't include them financing it, but instead they took domestic distribution for a fee in the low percentile vicinity of 15%, plus recouping the marketing costs. This and the resulting pandemic would lead to a joint cinematic and VOD release, but I'm going to come back to the release a bit later. In May 2018, the movie was shopped for international distribution at Cannes, even before production began, when it was officially announced as definitely happening this time, and the news attracted major global interest. Production was due to start in March 2019, with a release date of the 21st of August 2020 secured. Originally referred to as Little Bill and Little Ted at the end of Bogus Journey, in Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson's minds, the children of Bill and Ted were indeed sons. And this was because the movie was written by and starring young men. They'd never foreseen Little Bill and Little Ted be anything other than sons. In the very first draft of Face the Music, Little Bill and Little Ted, now named Will and Theo, still sons, and both Solomon and Matheson felt like they were just little carbon copies of their dads, and the comedy just wasn't coming through with having them as boys. So the decision was made early on to make them girls, to give the relationship a new dynamic, to make them representative of their dads but not copies of their dads. Billy and Thea instantly became more of an interesting prospect, to write about how Bill and Ted would raise daughters, and it turns out pretty excellently. Billy and Thea would also have an encyclopedic knowledge of musical history, which their dads didn't, but they'd retained their dad's general lust for life. Both acknowledged the pressure on their fathers and are steadfast about helping them. And maybe their daughters are actually the ones set to unite the world. And for a franchise with not a great deal of female representation before, casting the daughters was going to be pivotal. Samara Weaving had grown up in Australia, and so she didn't really get the Bill and Ted culture. She was emailed to audition and was so-so about it. And once her fiancé found out, he told her she had to audition, and they watched both previous films back to back. Bridget Lundy Payne watched clips before their audition, but hadn't seen the movies before. After they got the role, they got a bunch of friends together to watch the movies and basically get high while watching the movies. Both Weaving and Lundy Payne tested together for the roles to make sure they had chemistry, and were auditioned as individual characters, not Bill and Ted knockoffs. They were both wild producers who'd worked on the original movies, and they evoked the feeling how they felt meeting Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves for the first time. Both Weaving and Lundy Payne would meet with Winter and Reeves and hang out, with the older guys telling the youngers what life was like for them when they were young, and imparting the necessary wisdom fathers might on their children. Weaving and Lundy Payne were cast in June 2019. Keanu Reeves wouldn't realise that Samara Weaving was the niece of his Matrix castmate Hugo Weaving until much later. William Sadler confirmed his return as Death in March 2019 and also joined in an executive producer role. Amy Stock and Hal Landon Jr. were also confirmed to be returning to the roles of Missy and Captain Logan respectively in June 2019. The princesses Elizabeth and Joanna were recast, with Erin Hayes and Jamie Mays, rhyming names, respectively, but the movie does give special thanks to all the previous princesses, Annette Coy, Diane Franklin, Kimberly LaBelle and Sarah Trigger, as well as Ed Gale and Arturo Gill, the original stations, and Michael Chambers and Bruno Falcon, Good Robot Bill and Good Robot Ted. It was always the goal to include a tribute to Rufus and to the late George Carlin in a way that was both tasteful and meaningful, and to involve him in the story where they could. A scene where present-day Bill and Ted travel back to the 18-year-old thems in the Circle K parking lot and have a lengthy conversation with Rufus off to the side was originally written for the middle of the film. Despite the fact that the scene was great, they were concerned about forcing George Carlin into a role that he had never actually physically played would come across as disrespectful and ghoulish. That and worries over the cost of visual effects and the time they would need to achieve them would lead to the scene being cut before anything was filmed. Instead, they used Rufus's watch, and the character of Kelly was named after Carlin's daughter as a tribute, and Kristen Schaal was confirmed for the role of Kelly in July 2019, alongside Holland Taylor as her mother, the Great Leader, and Rufus's widow. Solomon Matheson, director Dean Parasite, and music supervisor Jonathan Leahy explored a number of potential musical candidates for the film, including ragtime composer Scott Joplin and blues superstar Robert Johnson. But they needed to be recognisable musicians and well-known household names. Ultimately, they settled on jazz trumpet pioneer Louis Armstrong, rock icon Jimi Hendrix, and Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Now, the inclusion of historical individuals in comedies like Bill and Ted is usually allowed to some extent by those stars' estates, although there were restrictions placed on the usage of both Armstrong and Hendrix. Although the two musicians, played by Jeremiah Kraft and Daz Manstill respectively, could be characters in the movie, their estates prohibited the use of their likeness in any promotional materials for the movie, including the poster, as well as the use of any of their music. The licensing costs for both Armstrong's and Hendrix's music were prohibited anyway, because, as I'm going to come to, this is a very low-budget movie. And this is why Armstrong is seen playing When the Saints Go Marching In, and Hendrix is seen playing Amazing Grace. Both of those tracks are public domain and therefore free to use. But the Bill and Ted series has never really been held to historical accuracy, so the producers decided to cast Sharon Gee as Ling Lun to help round out the cast, despite the fact that legends surrounding Ling Lun identify him to be male. Ling Lun is thought to be the creator of Chinese music and of the bamboo flute, inventing the 5 notes of the ancient Chinese 5-tone scale. Death provided the bass guitar for the group, so then they needed a drummer. Patty Ann Miller, a real-life drummer for musicians like Beyoncé and CeeLo Green, was cast as the cave woman Grom for this role. Now, Grom is completely made up for the movie, and Dean Parasite was saying in an interview with the LA Times, quote, "Grom didn't exist, but rhythm has been around forever, so to bring in Paleolithic rhythm seemed like a cool thing to do," unquote. Foo Fighters frontman Dave Grohl agreed to do a cameo, and Kid Cudi, a huge Bill and Ted fan, had an extended cameo as a quantum physics-obsessed version of himself, who may or may not be Station. Station! As far as the song To Save Reality, Dean Parasite didn't want it to be defined during production and wanted to explore the song in post, including the rhythm and the way it was coming together. So, on set, they performed to the Beatles' Obla-Dee Obla-Da. They had to find a beats per minute that would correspond to the final song's beats per minute, because Parasite was clear about wanting that tempo in order to sync it in post, and he would compose a song that would work from the ground up. And this is a seemingly impossible task, to create the one song that will unite the world. However, it's not actually about the song, it is about uniting the world and everyone in the world coming together to accomplish that. Filming started on the 17th of June 2019, and the bulk of filming took place in New Orleans during July 2019, and filming was completed by the 24th of August 2019. Special makeup effects artist Kevin Yeager also worked on Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey and came back to work on Bill and Ted's jail look, as well as Keanu Reeves' dad bod. Alex Winter wanted to look the most jacked for the scene in jail. Because Yeager had other commitments, his effects were applied by special effects artist Steve Kelly and hairstylist Jerry Baker. And while William Sadler was delighted to return to play Death, the makeup proved to be the largest obstacle to bringing Death back for the follow-up. Not only did the makeup process change slightly, but so did the actors' reaction to it. The process still took 3 hours to complete, but the method has changed over time. Airbrushes are now used in place of makeup brushes and sponges. Over the previous 29 years, William Sadler had seemingly developed a makeup allergy because his face began to puff and burn. After a few days of doing so, one evening they'd remove it and Sadler would wake up the following morning with his eyes swollen shut. Eventually, he was given prednisone to keep the swelling down. The first cut of the movie was assembled in February 2020, and the visual effects were split between 3 vendors: BUF and MELS in Montreal and Shade VFX in Santa Monica. Now, obviously, director Dean Parasote is no stranger to visual effects-driven sci-fi comedy because he also directed Galaxy Quest, which is one of the greatest comedies ever made. ILM's Bill George, who'd supervised Galaxy Quest, came on to face the music as a consultant. The last few weeks of filming was spent on large green screen setups, with limited set pieces built by production designer Melanie Jones. Director of photography Shelley Johnson had a very gritty look in mind, so even green screens were shot with smoke, because he felt like that would help make the overall VFX look less synthetic. Now, obviously, by this point, this is early 2020, and then coronavirus happened, and that completely impacted post-production on this movie because COVID hit just as they'd come out of the first preview screening. But Nancy St. John, the VFX producer, quickly scrambled resources, and the teams relied on working from home using Streambox to review in real time at high resolution. When designing the Circuits of Time, Bill George suggested it reflect on the original while also being contemporary and using the effects from the first movie kind of as a previs, so instead of a redesign, took the approved original visuals and just enhanced them. The film's 460 visual effects shots were divided between the 3 vendors, BUF having 120 shots, including Hell and the scenes with Dennis Caleb McCoy, MELS having 170 shots of the background of the 1932 World Series and the flying robots in the future, as well as facial reconstruction and prosthetics, and split screens for current Bill and Ted talking to future Bill and Ted. Shade VFX had the remaining 170 shots, including the finale freeway sequence, which included set extensions and people popping in from the past, and they also completed the look of the future, which was in the vein of architect Santiago Calatrava's City of Lights in Valencia, which is also seen in Tomorrowland and Season 3 of HBO's Westworld. And it may come as a surprise that a goofy sci-fi comedy contains real science, but Keanu Reeves loves physics, and so does Ed Solomon, so of course he got his friend, renowned quantum physicist Spiros Michalakis, to be the science advisor on the movie. While originally working on the script, Matheson went on Wikipedia to find out basic principles of entanglement and how our futures and pasts entangle, and how can you move forwards and backwards along a time axis, and will that change things, and if so, how? It was Ed Solomon who suggested sending these ideas to his friend Spiros Michalakis to ensure the science was correct, and he came back with tweaks and suggestions. Michalakis was also the science consultant for Ant-Man and also for Avengers Endgame. Ed Solomon would say, quote, "For us, what we always try to do with the, quote, physics in this movie is not worry about what's real and not real, but about what makes sense for the comedy of the movie, the emotional truth of the characters, and then the rules of the movie itself. As long as the time travel doesn't strike a wrong note with the key signature of the film, we're fine with it. And as long as it makes a kind of intuitive sense and we don't break our rules, then we're okay." The cherry on top was getting someone like Spiros, who is literally a world expert on the subject, to vet it for us. It means that when the trolls come after us, we can say, well, we happen to have Spiros right here. We had a fun exchange with a Twitter person who was like, "That's not possible." And I got to say, as a matter of fact, it is, unquote. So Bill and Ted Day, aka the 9th of June, as in 6/9, as in 69, which over here is the 6th of September, but okay, was chosen to release a brand new poster and a trailer for the movie, and fan fever was high, and the movie was on track to do decent box office. But of course, no one could have predicted 2020, and this movie was intended to be a major summer release courtesy of Orion Pictures and MGM. And then, of course, the coronavirus pandemic hit. And because the summer of 2020, there really wasn't much of a domestic box office, studios sought to maximise profits by any means, usually by releasing their finished films to as broad an audience as possible. And since the top 3 US cinema chains and some of the mid-sized chains don't play day-and-date theatrical premium VOD movies, the decision was made to release both theatrically and on premium VOD for $19.99. This was also at a time when only 62% of cinemas in the US were even open, and so the movie ended up with a fairly limited cinema release of only 1,007 cinemas. And obviously this all happened simultaneously on the 28th of August 2020. Bill and Ted Face the Music opened at number 4 at the US box office after The New Mutants and Tenet, which were both also new releases that week, and Unhinged, which had been out for 3 weeks. It would stay at number 4 in its second week, leaving the top 10 by its 5th week. And takings were low across the board. The New Mutants debuted at number 1 with just $8.8 million. No one was going to the cinemas in August of 2020. And as I mentioned, this movie has an incredibly low budget for what we actually get. On its $25 million budget, it would end up grossing $3.4 million domestically in US cinemas and $2.8 million internationally in cinemas for a worldwide gross of $6.3 million. But of course, that's not the whole story, because Bill and Ted Face the Music also released on VOD on the same day. Now, on its release on VOD, it was the most popular movie on Fandango Now, Apple TV, the iTunes Store, and Google Play that same weekend. It was the most watched movie on Fandango for the entire month of August, even though it was technically only available for 4 days. The movie maintained its number 1 spot on all of the VOD services the following week, including Amazon Prime, Vudu, iTunes, Fandango Now, and Google Play. According to a report by Deadline Hollywood, the movie made an estimated $32 million from digital rentals in the United States as of the 30th of September 2020. It was the 5th most popular premium VOD title during the COVID-19 pandemic after Mulan, Trolls World Tour, Scoob, and The Invisible Man. Premium VOD wasn't really seen as viable for the big tentpole movies, but for low to mid-budget movies, it seemed to make financial sense. On Rotten Tomatoes, Bill and Ted Face the Music has a rating of 82%, reading, "As wholesomely goofy as its heroes, Bill and Ted Face the Music is a rare, long-belated sequel that largely recaptures the franchise's original charm." And whilst we had to wait 29 years for Face the Music, there is a chance that Bill and Ted 4 may happen. It is in the preliminary stages at the moment, and all 4 guys like the idea that they've got and only want to do it if it's great. A Bill and Ted movie will always come from a place of love. Ed Solomon originally said in 2020 that a sequel could utilise Billy and Thea in a continuation story, but whether that'll happen, only time will tell. And the Circuits of Time welcome all excellent adventures, all bogus journeys, and all facings of the music. So I guess we'll just have to see what happens. Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson have always been very vocal about the fact that they wrote Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure as adolescent boys. And that movie is essentially a fantasy of an adolescent boy, that you end up with princess babes who accompany you to prom after your rock band saves the world. The first 2 films do exhibit a certain level of immaturity, and after 30 years, each of us change, the world changes, and these characters change. And we're given a rare opportunity to see how the first 2 films have genuinely affected both Bill and Ted. It offers the chance for the franchise to broaden the ensemble and the emotional scope, as well as the diversity of the historical figures, and the importance of Black and Asian musicians to modern music. Bill and Ted Face the Music goes against almost everything Hollywood holds dear, that you mustn't take risks, that you have to prioritise revenue, that it's better to do a reboot than do a legacy sequel. Basically, always take the safe option, something that the makers of Bill and Ted have never wanted to do. The fact we have this movie at all is a testament to that core 4 team of Ed Solomon, Chris Matheson, Alex Winter, and Keanu Reeves, wanting to stay true to the characters and ethos of Bill and Ted from the start, And that includes giving us a sequel that's totally different yet again. Just imagine you're told you're going to change the world one day. You're going to unite the world in peace and harmony with one song, or one book, or one podcast. Talk about pressure. And what if you don't deliver? Do you keep trying? Do you make it your life's work to write that song? In the case of Bill and Ted, they do keep trying. They do make it their life's work to write that song. And it just never happens. And of course, that sort of pressure can affect your lives. It can keep you in that stagnant character you were 25 years ago. It can also affect your marriage and your friendships. I feel like the friendship with death is a really underrated story in this movie, because Bill and Ted have had a falling out with death, and in many ways they are unwilling to reconcile with him, because death is inevitable, and reconciling with death the character is also accepting death the process. And until they unite the world, how can they truly accept death? It's all surprisingly deep for a light, goofy sci-fi sequel. And it's the encouragement of their children, Billy and Thea, that leads Bill and Ted to finally make peace with death, to accept death into their lives, and to maybe fully create that idea that they're truly passing the torch to their daughters. And this is also a movie that talks about the next generation and passing on not only your wisdom to them, but also putting your faith in them, that they will perhaps be better than you, and that you shouldn't hold them back, and that you should embrace their skills, and that we can't save the world, but maybe they can. What I've always loved about these characters is their pure innocence and joy. It's just charming and goofy and anchored by genuinely wonderful performances and wholesome beliefs in love, friendship, and the power of music. We need more movies that just make you smile and elicit pure joy. The Bill and Ted movies, in their hearts, in their souls, are all about working together to make a better future. But most importantly, just be excellent to each other and party on. Thank you for listening. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts on Bill and Ted Face the Music. And as always, thank you for your continued support of this podcast. If you have enjoyed this episode and you want to help this podcast grow and reach more people, then there are several ways you can do this. You could tell a friend or family member about this podcast and about this episode. You can leave a rating or review wherever you found this episode. You can also find me on social media. I'm at Verbal Diorama on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd. You can find posts, you can follow me, you can share posts, you can like posts. All of that helps with visibility and hopefully other people finding this podcast. And of course, if you like this episode on Bill and Ted Face the Music, you might also like episode 220, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and episode 221, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. So the next episode, we're going into October and spooky season is here. So in 1988, Tom Holland, no, not that one, co-wrote a screenplay about a possessed dog. It would spawn a media franchise of 6 sequels, a reboot in 2019, and a 2021 TV series. At the time, parents called for it to be banned, claiming it would encourage violence among children, even though this is not a movie made for children. The series would be plagued with accusations about child violence, mostly because this particular doll is a children's toy. His name is Chucky. The film is Child's Play, and it starts off the month of October on Verbal Diorama, so please join me next episode for the history and legacy of Child's Play. Now, as I always say, this podcast is free, and it always will be free. However, it is not free to run a podcast. I am hosted by the wonderful team at Captivate. I use a product called Descript to help record and edit my episodes. And I also use a product called Canva to do my episode art and various social media art. All 3 of those things cost money. And so I do rely on the generosity of some amazing human beings to help keep Verbal Diorama moving forward. And while no one is under any obligation to ever provide any financial support, and these episodes will remain free and available to everyone, if you have some spare change and you get value from these episodes and you feel like you want to help out, then there are 2 ways you can do that. The first is by giving a one-off tip at verbaldiorama.com/tips. And the second is by giving a regular monthly donation, and that is at verbaldiorama.com/Patreon. And thank you to the excellent patrons of Verbal Diorama: Sade, Claudia, Simon, Laurel, Derek, Kat, Andy, Mike, Luke, Michael, Scott, Brendan, Lisa, Sam, Jack, Dave, Stuart, Nicholas, Zoe, Kev, Pete, Heather, Danny, Ali, Stu, Brett, Philip M, Michelle, Zenos, Sean, Rhino, Philip K, Adam, Elaine, and Kyle. If you want to get in touch with me, then you can. You can email verbaldiorama@gmail.com. You can also email me via my website, verbaldiorama.com as well. You could give me a general hello. You could give me some feedback, or you could give me a suggestion. You can also find bits that I do over at filmstories.co.uk. And finally,
It's wet. Best 75 out of 81.
Is he playing hopscotch by himself?
He looks miserable, dude.
Yes!
Dude, he's cheating.
Yes!
Let's go, dude.
Good luck, Dads. Be sweet.
Hey, Death.
If it isn't the Wild Stallions. Have you come to sue me again?
No, Death. Not at all. We just need to talk to you, Death.
Talk to the head.
bye.
Movies you know, movies you don't. Prequels, sequels,